Yep.
Reflect on yesterday a little bit, too, and some of the things that went on. Use these as a teachable moment. Jim's going to be recording a little of this, so keep your four-letter words to things like sand, wood, and so forth. It'll work out pretty well.
Forecast.
Four. There you go. CST. A few things yesterday. In planing stock, we ran into about 3 or 4 problems. I was thinking about them last night, and I thought I'd like to talk about it first, the sequence in planing. A lot of the pieces were glued up. The first thing you want to do is get something fairly close to true, one side. Then flip it over and put that side down, because it will slide across the table much better, especially when you don't have bed rollers. And this will be something from a sales standpoint or a show standpoint that's very important. Also, what other things did you notice about the planer before and after and during planing? Anything that you guys
bogging down.
Okay, it's bogging down. First of all, we've got good power here. I mean, it's industrial power, so it wasn't any problem with the lines, although that was there. But the knives were dull. Did you notice the difference, though, when I took that off and just spent about 4 passes honing those knives? And this is another thing you could do at a show or in a situation where you're demonstrating the tool doesn't look good. Take that off, take a sharpening stone, 2 passes on each edge just to bring that back to a knife edge. That's all you really need, not much more than that. And you don't change anything else. What else did we do?
Better when the dust collector is reasonably.
Okay, when the lower the dust collector is, the better it is, because the chips as they build up in there are also a resistance factor.
Also, the use of wax on the surface helped immensely.
Taking that paraffin and just taking a bar of paraffin. I do it on shapers too, where I have a power feeder, because it skids across there and makes all the difference in the world. Okay, now with regard to shaping yesterday, a few things that may or may not have been obvious to you is, one, cutter shimming. We've shimmed cutters 2 times this week. What were some of the reasons, or why were we shimming, and what was the effect of the shims? Where did they go? Okay, for fit purposes is really what a shim does. In one case, we were making the cope and stick, and we made the tongue bigger so that it was more of a wedge fit into the groove that was there. And by adding, I don't know, 12 or 15 thousandths of shims, we're actually better able to make that fit work. Yesterday, we shimmed between the panel raiser and the bearing so that the tongue on the raised panel fit that same groove correctly. Now, all of that requires some fooling around, fussing with the parts. That's no big deal. It's just something you have to do. But understanding that relationship is probably one of the most important things related to shapers. And when you talk about tooling, or somebody comes up to you and says, you know, I got this cutter, and the cutter doesn't make a good match. Well, what could be wrong? Shim, fit, you can change that fit. Another thing, even a set of cutters that works beautifully, if I send them out to be sharpened, what's going to happen? I'm going to change them, and I'm going to have to shim them to make them work. So it is one of those facts of life that has to just be part of what's going on. Now, yesterday you guys put this cutter head on. This is a little bit different, and in the sense that you see it's got a cutter up here that's a spur. It's designed for wrapping and joining. Notice those are inserts. They almost look like the old injector razor blades. They have pins on them that hold them in. Those are designed so you can flip them over, and there are 2 sharpened carbide edges on them, then they're discarded. They're thrown away. So this cutter is designed for rabbiting. It does a real good job of jointing or rabbiting. And so if you're gluing a lot of stock, you could offset your table or your fences, put your power feeder on, and make that work. One thing going back to the power feeder yesterday too, in shaping, we had some panels slipping and twisting. Now, that power feeder actually moved under power. In other words, it changed its orientation. One of the knuckles probably could have been tighter. This happens. You think you got them tight, and it's going to happen, and it's one of the things that you have to do. You notice also yesterday I had a barrier on the fence. I put that on there so that no way could that power feeder slip into the panel raiser and raise the, these will raise just like any other material. I've seen panel raised power feeder tires. I've seen them actually shape away that magnesium or hot metal rim that's back there. By putting that shim in there, we knew it couldn't touch. It might rub up there. So that's one of the things that you do to just a kind of a belt and suspenders approach. Prove your arithmetic, make it work for yourself by eliminating the chance of it happening. The other thing, if you look at this power feeder, the tires are not parallel with the table. When we set it up today, we'll adjust those knuckles so it is. Because what happened when that kicked up, we're only running on a small track as opposed to the whole thing. So our coefficient of friction goes down greatly, and then those corners will twist more. Now, one other thing about that, we could have actually made a plywood face that went on here that was one piece with the profile cut out of those two cutters. Now what happens is there's no way anything could go into that opening because it's exactly the size of the opening of the bit. Only the bit will go through. Now, why didn't I do that? Well, with the bearing on there, I thought the bearing would support it and actually reduce that opening half and half. For the most part it did, especially when we aligned one piece up behind the other. The bigger panels weren't a problem because you had a bigger surface area to work with. The smaller ones, especially the end grain, is where we really experienced the turning. But by chasing it with a longer piece, we eliminated that. And is that typical? Yeah, in a lot of shops, that's really what happens. One chases the other and you just keep working the pile down until there's nothing left. So that's not atypical. All right, well, those are some of the things that I think are learning experiences from yesterday. And some of these things are demonstration oriented. They can either make you look good or make you look bad at a show. And these are some of the things you want to do before the crowd gets there. I mean, you don't want to be doing this when they're there. It's very hard to do these things and stay focused when you got people turning the cranks and asking questions and you're trying to set this up. If it's set up and you get people that are interested and you get a crowd, then you can put the demonstration on. The demonstration looks good. You can shut it off and ask for the order. Now, yesterday I set up one of the cuts for the corner joint. We're going to make a tongue dado cut. Now, on the shaper over there, that little one, we've got the groove cutter, and the groove height is set so that if I were to put this down on the table, we're going to see that that groove lines up with the thickness of the stock. And that's not by accident, because what's going to happen then is it's going to be rabbited. The mating part will be rabbited so that we're coming up from the base of the stock until that fits together. Now, I marked these pieces for a reason. This says front panel, this says side panel. On the sides, this is the treatment you're going to get. You're going to cut a rabbit out of there on this shape. On the front, on both ends, you're going to cut this groove. I also drew the cope cuts on there, or the stick cuts on there. Guess why?
Orientation.
Orientation of the wood. If you turn this piece over, you're back to square one. You will have the experience of setting up the stick cutters again after we get all the grooves cut, because we're running out of shapers and we're moving on to the next operation. So one of the things that you can do is you can draw that notch on one piece and draw the rabbit on the other, so that when you come to that machine, you know that the pencil lines have to be taken out. Now that's something you can do with the bench. Don't come to the machine and go, because somebody's going, let's go, and you get in a hurry, and that's exactly when you make the errors. If you come over and go, these two go to this shaper, these two go to that shaper, I'm putting them in, leaving those at the bench, and I'm walking over here, you've consciously made an effort to succeed instead of fail. And it doesn't take that much more planning. Okay, the things that have to be done on this shaper then today, we have to close these fences up, and we have to set it up to cut this rabbit that meets that groove. So that'll be one of the challenges that we have today. And we'll get a couple of you on that here shortly. But that's some of the things from yesterday that I think were important, and some of the learning things that we're moving to. I did not set up the sander for the top shed, and the reason I did not is they're about 18 and a half. That's an 18-inch sander. After you get your box together, you measure the width and the length, you add 1.5 inches to both of those, and those are your finished sizes. Once you cut that, we will then be able to sand them, and that's no big deal. I mean, once it's set up, we'll set it up and we'll do them all at one time. It'll be a very quick run. It'll go very quickly. So don't worry about that. Just set that aside and focus on some of these other operations. This is a very important one. Once these cuts are done today, you can then start to clamp up your frames with the panels in them. And then you can clamp up and assemble the box. So those will be two separate things, but that's what will happen today. And many of you will have those boxes, at least that frame, that rectangle done. Once we do that, we know the size of the frame of the base, and then we'll go on to that. That requires a rabbet. We'll just change the fence and the height and cut that rabbet here. The legs require a rabbet. That'll require another change of this. So this cutter's set up here, and it'll be used for a number of operations. The one with the feather board over there is the one to cut that groove that you see that Tom's got. Then we're going to be cutting, on the other one, we're going to put a roundover on, and that roundover is going to be for the legs. And I've got that out. It's a 1/2 inch, so somebody's going to have to flip the spindle. If you haven't flipped the spindle on that one, that would be a good experience. And Rich, you can decide who's involved with that. So that would be a good learning one to change the spindle over to the 1/2 inch, because I don't have a 3/4 inch bore for that particular arc. It's a tool steel cutter too, and you can take a look at it. This morning, before some of you got here, Tom saw me do it. I actually honed the cutting edges a little bit, and it should be just keen as a razor. And for what little mileage we're cutting today, you just do a beautiful job. So that's the strategy there. Now, if you were to stand over that way, I'm going to be on the other side of the table saw and talk about another setup. Do I get a position, Jim? If you look down parallel to that fence, if you get your eye down and sight this, you'll see 3 lines. The line that lines up here, if you line up there, you should see that that line on the saw blade lines up with that point, and that one, if you extend that line straight back, lines up with that. Now, you got to get down about where Tom is to really see that. Take a look. Make sure you see that. What I've done is I decided on a cove, an arbitrary size. I really didn't measure anything. What I did try to do is make it equidistant from both edges. Now, I then raised the blade to the height of the finished cove. And then I determined the angle that this fence is on based on those lines. Now, there's a set of parallels you can put on and turn and do the same thing. But in a show situation, you don't have all those gadgets and gizmos. If you're going to demonstrate that, once you draw that on there, if you look down the line, you can even engage the customer and say, does that look like the right angle? Sight down both sides. If they say yes, say, okay, I'm blaming you, it's not right. Clamp it down, and this has to be very secure to make this work. Notice also I used one of these feather boards, and I've got this metal thing. This is to keep it from lifting. I did leave room here consciously for my push stick to go through. There's no reason for your hand to be anywhere but behind that blade. Actually, when you shouldn't go beyond that. That's all you really need. Okay, so in doing these, you'll notice that I put an arrow on all of the parts. And there are a number of them to be done. That arrow goes to the fence. If you see the X, you did something wrong. Now, that's another thing that I did. If you look at these, the arrows all point the same way. Everything is oriented exactly the same. And that's part of doing a big job, is getting your parts so you just pull them off like a deck of cards. They all come off the top the same way over and over again, and it reduces the amount of thinking, and it reduces the likelihood of error because it's a continuous habit type of thing. And that can make you look like a better woodworker in a hurry.
So the arrow goes towards the fence?
The arrow touches the fence.
But eventually you're going to have to do both.
No.
So this one is.
I just had, it'll go this way, but I had the setup only marked on one end. You ask a good question. They'll only go this way. In other words, I'm going to drop that blade. I'm not going to take all of that out in one pass. I did this one. This one is, for all intents and purposes, done. Now, how will you know when you're done? That's a good question. You can use this as a setting, or you could take all of them and make that pass. But when you see that edge, or you can take a piece that you've done and use this as a gauge, put it up here and say, how close is that to what I have here? But that is done. Okay.
And that's the best operation for a group like this, is to take something.
Well, as big as this is, you need a shaper cutter that tall, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Most times, you're not going to buy that kind of tooling for one operation.
Or you could use a smaller shaper cutter
By changing heights and maybe, but you'd still have overlaps that would need to be sanded. Now this is also done in remodeling or restoration work. You got one molding, you got 40 feet, you got to match something in the house. Well, you can't be in both rooms at the same time, so if it's close, let's say there's a little more gradual sweep on one of these, so what? It looks identical. Most people will not ever measure it. Your eye kind of fools you anyway. The other thing about this is with a 10-inch blade, If you want a wide, graceful curve, that's a better choice. If you want more of a U shape, you put about an 8-inch blade on it. And that'll enable you to make more of a U shape. So there's a number of factors involved here. How'd I do? I'm just trying to see what we got.
I'm just curious, the radius that
How did I determine it?
you're inch and 3/4 roughly, inch and 3/4 on a 3-inch piece.
Right. And I'm going to play to the camera here, but if you look at that end, you're going to see that I just arbitrarily drew a diagonal on there. The first thing that I can't change is the arc of that shaper cutter, which I don't know where I put it now.
Right in front of you.
Good thing it wasn't a snake. And is that up here now?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't change that, so that became a gimme. All right, so I had to use that. Once I knew what that arc was, and I know the rabbit's back there, then I cut the cove, and I wanted the same amount of space on both sides, and then I arbitrarily chose a bevel. I've intentionally left a little bit of space there because when you sand that cove a little bit, it's going to go right into the bevel. And that was the thinking that went on in my mind. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's the plan. You fail to plan, you plan to fail. But if you don't know where you're going, any map will do, as the saying goes. So this map works pretty well. I tend to think this will work. Okay. And we've got order. By having the arrows, if these are not the same, we still have the arrow and we can decide which end the arrow gets, the bevel or the radius. So in other words, I can change that bevel at the very last minute. So it's a little shallower, a little deeper, we'll cut that and we just change the fence and we do it. So that's no biggie. Okay, so
We should be able to get 4 feet out of this board.
we'll put the dust collector on when we do this too, because it raises a lot of data coming out of it. Okay. Now, you can see the cove is right down the middle. And if we were to look at the end, we can see that it's starting to shape that profile about where it needs to be. So now, if it isn't totally centered here, it's no big deal because that blade doesn't come straight up, it comes up on an arc. So when you had it set and you start to look at it, it may be deceptive. Okay, now I gotta make sure I got my arrow on the fence again, don't I? I'll raise that blade up about like yay. Okay, now let's take a look at the line. We're following it pretty closely. It may not be perfect, but we're following it pretty closely. So,
You didn't raise the blade.
yeah, yes I did. Just a smidge, just a bit. Now you watch it, that's about all I'm gonna do.
Okay.
This is a great way of starting a round golden cut.
Yeah.
What one to do, real nice stuff.
I actually did a kitchen, my entire kitchen this way. Okay, we're probably very close to the line there, and I don't know, can you see the line? What's it look like?
Yeah, you're getting real close.
Maybe, all right, then I'm not gonna do it. We'll do all of them together so that all of these will be the same. In other words, this, we'll just throw that in the batch. Now you can see a line there, there's my glue line, you see it? But it's gonna be buried in that cove and it may go away before it's all said and done when I cut that bevel. In other words, it may be hidden where somebody looks at it, boy, that looks fine. And so, these are just some of the strategies you really have to look the wood over. Now, you won't get that on day one. This is something I've been doing a long time. But the more you work with it, the more you go, boy, if I'd have flipped that board that other way. And the more times you say that, the more it becomes a reality and you start to think it out. And so, these are some of the strategies to think about. Okay, so I'm going to drop that blade back down and I'm going to get a team of 2 or 3 of you to work on this. The important thing is you do all the pieces with that very light cut. Put the dust collector on because you see the kind of fines it brings up. And I probably have to clean this out a little bit before I do it, simply because I didn't have the hose on yesterday. It's probably plus. But we'll get that set here shortly. It's ready to go. The important thing to remember is you come off the pile and what? Arrow to the fence, because if you get halfway through and you do this, boy, do we have a mess on our hands. So, all right, so then the other thing, we need another team to set up that shaper, and then we need a team to set that up. And those are the three operations we need to get going on. So start with those. Let me get this hose cleaned up. I'll get a hose on this, and we'll be ready to roll. This is the front. And what you're seeing is the groove, and here's your raised panel. So the side goes in like this. This means the rabbet is on the good face. The tongue is on the back, like that. Yeah, that's the same thing. Oh boy. Where do you got problems coming up?
Quarter to 9.
I still can't visualize. If I don't draw it on these pieces, I'm going to ask you that. That's about the way I do this.
I don't draw it out. But see, if you cut the other one out, what do you got?
No problem.
Yes, you do. A smaller box. Look, I'm pretty.
Perfect. Could have been ready to move.
You got the Cliffe close.
Buddy of mine, karaoke, he's got a 56 Ford.
Take.
On the other side.
Ford pickup.
Hi, my name's Craig Walls with Delta International Machinery. I'm the Illinois rep. I've been with Delta for 18 years. And when it comes to training, I think training is an integral part of any company's success. And training your people makes them more successful, makes their job easier to do. While our main purpose is to sell machinery, we have to know many aspects of the machine as well as the applications of the machines, and that's where training comes in. For a company to invest money in training, I think you can't put a dollar value on it. It's very important when one sets up a training. While I may be trained here, we many times throughout the year train our distributors, and you have a ripple effect all the way down from what we've learned, passing it on to our distributors. So when you do set up a training program, probably the key to this is understanding that the people that you're talking to, the knowledge of each person is different. And you have to plan for that in your presentation. You have to plan for that as you set up any type of application for making any type of projects.
Hi, my name is Tom Plucker. I work for Delta Machinery. I've worked for them for several years. I'm here on a training program to learn a lot more about machinery and how they apply to our business. And I think what I'm learning the most is a lot more empathy for our customers. Having gone through the woodworking process, there's so many setups where the machine can fail or the tooling can fail, and those setups are critical, and I'm learning a lot of that with this training program. I believe that'll overlap in my sales job, because I'll be able to sell the equipment. I'll be able to provide a lot more information while I'm selling the equipment to the customers at the show activity and at my dealers.
Hi, my name's Christine Thomas, and I am an area sales manager for Delta Machinery. I've been with the company for about 5 years. I haven't always been in this position. I was in an entry-level position for a few years. I am out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and I cover part of Columbus and Dayton and Cincinnati and part of Indiana. We're here in DeKalb this week for some training, some woodworking training. We're building some chests, and we have been able to use shapers and table saws, joiners, all kinds of different woodworking equipment and machinery. I feel that this training is part of the big picture for me because in my day-to-day job I do a lot of face-to-face selling. I do a lot of presentations for my customers who sell to end users, and I also will work a lot of shows towards the end of the year, and I'll get people who come up to me, woodworkers, who ask application questions like, why would this wood be burning, or why is my planer skipping, or why is it bogging down, or why is my dust collector making this kind of noise. So I feel that with training like this, being able to use the machines with all the hands-on and having the experts around to ask any kinds of questions that would come up during the year or questions about that particular application is really, really very, very helpful. We're very lucky to do it, and that's the main thing I'm going to take away with me this week is being able to answer some more questions. It makes me more credible with my customers and then with their customers at a show if I can say, yes, when we used this joiner, we used it in this way, and this is how it turned out, and that was good and bad. The other kind of training that I would receive for the other aspect of my job, the more selling part, face-to-face selling, would be I've received some negotiating training, a negotiating seminar, and also some professional selling skills. And those were both very helpful. They just teach you the basics, kind of what you would expect. Listening skills, communicating skills, how to close the sale, and helped with the oral communications when you're face-to-face with a dealer and overcoming objections, those type of things. So overall, it's been very fortunate to have the training.
Hi, I'm Jerry McGilka from Delta International Machinery, and I'm an area sales manager for Delta for the state of Wisconsin. I've worked for Delta for 17 years. And as I reflect on the training we've gone through for the last couple of years, I keep thinking about how I actually go through the process of selling machinery to my dealers. Normally when I'm working with them, oftentimes we're just talking about independent machines, joiner, table saw, etc. And just by going through the project that we did, it enables me to see how all the machines fit together and come together when doing a project like that. The benefit to it is the fact that if a particular dealer is, or even his customer is talking about a particular machine, it gives me good ideas to make suggestions for why they may need a second piece of equipment. And I think that's going to be a real good help to not only myself but to the dealers when I convey the information to them.
Well, guys, Delta training day 4, observations on how it's going so far.
Looking good to me.
Looking good. It's beautiful.
This is a lot prettier than I thought. Yeah, let's just tell you what, Craig. Let's set it over on the concrete. All right. Need a hand?
You want to do both little ones first?
Like, yeah, we put two on the bottom first.
I don't know which.
Why don't we do both? Go ahead and do that.
Do it from the outside.
I need you to look that down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Which is bottom?
Just snug it.
I would say, what, yours is one, this one.
Do you want to pound this a little?
Oh,
bit?
yeah,
Tighten it?
No,
This one's in there.
Yeah, but I'd like to figure out the squareness.
That's bottom.
Ken, what were your expectations coming into the training?
Well, basically, in the beginning, I was not real excited. I guess because of the fact that I looked at it as another, more or less, a job assignment, and because I'm in the tool business and I'm selling woodworking tools, it's something that you have to have a reasonable knowledge about. But after I had started working on this particular project, I found that I became more and more engrossed in it, and almost to the point where I'm looking at it totally different now than I did in the beginning of the week when I first started. For example, this woodworking project, you look at maybe running a shaper or running a planer, and you really don't get into too much of what it produces. All you're looking at in the beginning is exactly what it does. But I think when you start working with the various projects that we've been going through, and you can see that in the end, using each one of these machines ultimately produces a project that all of a sudden you say, hey man, this is really neat. I really enjoy this. This is something now, as I can see this thing pulling together, that I really do enjoy. And so now I'm looking at some of this woodworking equipment almost totally differently because of the fact that it's more than just the planer. That planer is thinning down the board for a particular purpose, and it all kind of fits together. So the bottom line, I would say, is I'm very much excited now, and have a totally different outlook on it now that I've been into the program for about 4 days. So I'm real excited.
How does the training that you're receiving here, how does that compare with some of the other training you've received from Delta?
Well, actually, the training that we get from Delta, when we go into the lab, we run, that's the kind of training where we run a particular machine, and so this is different in so much as that you are absolutely starting out with an idea on paper, if you will, a plan to make a cabinet or whatever, and each of the steps down the line, I mean, you're going right through each particular sequence, even to the point where you're getting more involved with the sanding and the gluing and things of that nature. That kind of training we don't really we don't get with Delta. We're doing more of the run this machine, run a bandsaw, and take some scrap wood and run it through. But this is totally different.
So the depth of this training has really been
yes, it's
very
definitely
useful,
more
yeah.
in depth, in so much as that you're able to really get into really all different aspects of it. It's absolutely fascinating. I love it. And,
so you give it a thumbs up then?
Yeah, I do.
Right.
I mean, I look at it totally different now than when I first came in here and looked at it, because you have to understand where I was coming from. Pretty much all of the different projects that we did were simply run a wood lathe or run a bandsaw, run some scrap wood through, rip a few boards, and okay, this does this, this does that, and that's fine. But here, setting up the shaper and actually running the wood through in a group, working together as a group, and then seeing this project starting to have some closure to it, and seeing what you actually ultimately are producing. It's absolutely beautiful, marvelous. I love it.
How many years have you been with Delta?
I've been with Delta now. I'm just completing my 14th year, and I'm starting my 15th year right now.
So it seems to me like Delta makes a commitment to training, and feels that it's an important part of
yes, and I think that this
the
is
process.
and this is just this program that we have going on here today, and actually all this week is so much of a more in-depth program, and it teaches you to work too with your fellow workers as a team. That kind of a thing. You're depending on one another, you help one another, and you're working as a group. And you're in the beginning, I could see that we were each of us operating on our own little circle. But as we went into the program further, we started operating and thinking more like a group and helping one another.
And what is the what region of the country do you cover?
I cover the state of Minnesota and the state of North Dakota, so I'm working all of Minnesota and all of North Dakota, and cover that that area up there in the northwest area.
Okay, well, thanks for your comments and good luck with the rest of the project.
Thank you, sir. I really enjoyed it, Jim. It's fantastic.
All right.
Fantastic.
You're gonna have to get that, another one. You ain't have to get off the jaws.
Pull those up. Pull those out. So
Yeah.
maybe I want to divide it.
Yes.
Go.
Hi, my name is Richard O'Neill from Delta International Machinery Company. I'm Director of Regional Sales for the central part of the United States, which encompasses about 15 states. I have 12 people working for me, selling woodworking machinery and servicing retail accounts. The selection process for this training seminar was determined based upon some other training seminars we've had with Roger and basic woodworking, and we've stepped up to a more in-depth, high-end type of training where shapers were a major part of the training. And in doing that, it allows our people to be that much more in-depth with their knowledge in talking to cabinet makers and builders and having a very good knowledge of the setup and as well as the actual production of a piece and some of the problems that a person would run into. That was the goals of this training seminar, to bring a complete package to our people, basically bringing from raw material all the way through a completed project. This way they can talk a lot more intelligently to users, buyers, and the general public when they ask questions about this stuff. Roger has been associated with us for an awful long time, and he just brings a great deal of experience in teaching as well as the actual building and woodworking business. So we have reached all the goals that we've set out for ourselves, and now that we can look back and look at this project and look at where we came from 4 or 5 days ago, it's a great deal of work that we put into this, and we're bringing an awful lot of knowledge back to our individual territories.
As you can see, everyone is tired as shit, ready to go home.
Just like Scout Camp.
I don't see that enthusiasm of yesterday.
Yeah, there's some burnout factor working, Jim, I think.
Moral of the story is, just go out and buy the damn thing.
Did you change the bit at all?
No, we had the same
Small bit?
this for the small bit, and it was just seemed to be perfect clearance for that. What's happening? Did it work? Yeah. It made a big difference. It's like everyone was a fight before that.
Can he just go to Builder Square and said, I bought one of these and it didn't have enough brass screws there? Not Builder Square, Home Depot. No. I want you to cut that package open and give me two. See this, the Depot. I don't know what they did. Whoever counts them is going to work. business, give them that one.
Well, such as the cherry we work with. And these are so important to the actual success and setup, and important to sales because people really do judge us on the product that we turn out off the machine.
Absolutely, Roger. It's really important to, again, like I said, to make sure you put the preparatory work into this, and the rest of it, as far as the in-depth part of it, it's just absolutely fantastic. It's a great, great program you got going here.
Kenny, I want to thank you for being here. Have a
Thank
safe
you,
trip
sir.
home.
I enjoyed it. Thanks.
Well, Jerry, you've been here a week at Cliffe Cabinets doing some shaper setups and learning a little bit about the unique tooling that's available. I got a couple questions for you. First, what have you learned this week? And second, how are you going to apply it to Delta sales in the future? Well, I've learned quite a bit, and I think one of the things that stands out in my mind is even the use of the table saw, the extra different types of applications you can use. We had the opportunity to cut a cove molding, and normally that wouldn't be the first thing you think of a table saw being able to do. And seeing it set up properly and used properly, it works out real well. I think it'll help as far as sales goes because sometimes customers may be a little bit tight on their budget, and in questioning them about the type of job that they'd like to do, pointing out that, hey, if you're looking to do a little bit of molding, it's possible to do certain applications like that on the saw, provided you've got a very good saw. So perhaps maybe rather than stretching the budget on two lesser units, get one good unit, get it by, let it pass by for a short period of time, and then learn on that, and then step up to the shaper.
Invest in the unisaw and then maybe the cabinet shaper. Well, you know, you bring up an interesting thing. Here we're talking about shapers and we're making cove molding. But this is the other side that is unique. If we don't have that particular profile we want, we can adapt using the other tools. And this is another mental tool in the toolbox that I think is important. Jerry, it's been a pleasure having you here this week.
Well, it's been a pleasure learning from you, and I thank you for your time and attention.
I enjoyed it immensely.
All right, thanks.
Christine, been here a week at Cliffe Cabinets, learning a little bit about shaper setups and building this raised panel cedar chest. I want to ask you a couple questions. First, what kinds of things have you learned that are important to you? And second, how are you going to apply them to sales with Delta in the future?
I think both of those ideas are so interchangeable because every application teaches you something that I can use in selling. Like, especially the thing that stands out to me the most is how we use a combination of machines in conjunction with the other machines. Like the joiner is going to complement the planer, obviously. The different operations that you can do on a shaper, and you can do some of them on a table saw, but shaper's better for some. We used different machines and different jigs and accessories in conjunction with everything else for the final project.
One of the things we use is a power feeder. How would you say that that might be something that you could use as far as sales? I know we've always had them in the catalog, or not always, but for a number of years. Based on what you've had experiences here, what might you be able to say about power feeders that you couldn't before?
Oh, they're fantastic. The more I use them and the more exposure I get with them, I would definitely recommend them. I think there's different power feeders for different jobs, and by using the two different sizes this week and the two different shapers, I think that will help me a lot in being able to recommend.
Based on application.
Yes, based on application.
Right. When we're taking those heavy raised panels, obviously we need the big feeder. But for the lighter things, the copes and the sticks, the light duty feeder does a wonderful job. And these are the kinds of things I think are important to bringing out to the end user. Christine, it's been a pleasure having you this week.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure, Roger.
Coming down.
Thanks.
Bye now. Down here for a week of shaper training here at Cliffe Cabinets. I know we've gone through a lot of operations and a lot of setups, and I want to ask you, as you react to this week, what do you think the experiences were worth as far as their training, and how do you think they'll apply it to the things they're doing in the field?
I think based on prior training being a basis for where we've come this year to a much more difficult project, based upon the experience of actual setups, numerous setups for different types of operations. It now gives them a lot more insight into what a cabinet maker or a hobbyist or a real high-end woodworker can possibly see as a problem in doing those things. And I think now they can take it back to their territory and to their distribution and use that knowledge and really, do a good job for us selling that type of equipment.
One of the people that we interviewed said empathy was a word that he now empathizes a little more with the end user and the cabinet maker and what they go through to successfully accomplish a job like this. And I think they have a better understanding of that. And I think another thing that came out was tooling.
I think now maybe they have a better knowledge of what the tooling does and perhaps a little better awareness level. How do you feel about those things?
I think based upon the amount of machines that we have to sell in that category, shapers, joiners, to do edge treatments and also cope and sticks and style and rail configurations. Now they have a better understanding, as you said, empathy with the user, and I think they've learned enough now where they can take that back and use it in a constructive way and in a much more knowledgeable situation.
I think the dialogue they'll have with the end user will be better because they have a better understanding of all of the things they're talking about. When they say cope, it might have been, well, I'm not sure, and they have to see it, but I think the visualization will be important too.
Exactly.
Well, Rich, I want to really thank you for bringing everybody out. It's been a
Thank
great
you.
week, and I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Thanks very much, Roger. It was a pleasure.